I've always understood this, and I'm sure you do as well, and your listeners, that so much of healing is related to stabilizing the nervous system. And when we're in the fight or flight, it's very hard to heal. When I work with somebody who comes to me, especially with a chronic issue, I like to tell them, it's great that you're working on your diet and maybe you have some good practices and you're on a good supplement plan and you're doing red light and cold plunges and all the biohacking stuff. But what are you doing for your nervous system and for your life force? If you're feeling like a lot of anger, there's also exercises you can do. The eyes also house the liver. They're connected to the liver in Chinese medicine, and sound as well. So there is, I love doing the 5-element Qigong. So there's one movement, it's like a punching movement. And as you punch, you're making a sound and you're giving these angry eyes and it's shh, shh. So you're with resistance. And just that alone, you feel like smoke's coming out of your eyes and you're resisting with your punch, but it's helping to detoxify the liver.
Hey there, it's Sandee Sgarlata. Get ready to dive deep into incredible stories of people who've taken life's challenges and turned them into a roadmap to happiness. On this show, we're not just talking about overcoming obstacles. We're uncovering the real, gritty secrets to living a life filled with peace, joy, and genuine happiness. This is Happiness Solved. So let's get started, because happiness is a choice and the choice is yours. Danielle Pashko, such a great pleasure to have you on today. How's everything going?
Everything is great. How are you doing?
Great. I'm doing so great. And I'm so excited to be speaking with you. So for the audience, Danielle is a functional nutritionist and chronic illness coach with over 2 decades of experience. Her specialties are immune health, weight loss, digestive health, children's nutrition, women's health. Yes, I can say that word, Lyme disease, and long COVID. What I just mentioned to Danielle before we hit record is that I love that when you became ill yourself with chronic Lyme disease and long COVID, you dove into martial arts, specifically Tai Chi and Qigong. And that is so cool. So we have a lot to unpack today.
Yeah. It was an interesting road how I got there. That was not my first stop.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go into your background a little bit. What made you get into functional nutrition? And I think we all know maybe why you became a chronic illness coach, because you went through some of those things yourself, but functional nutrition, like what brought you into that field?
Right. I was doing this job prior to having any health issues. Since a very little girl, I lived with a sick mother with breast cancer, and she ended up passing away when I was 13 years old and she was 38. But she was very into visualization, meditation, homeopathic remedies, macrobiotic diet. So, and she gave me a lot of books to read that were in the alternative medicine space and with dealing with a lot of spirituality. So those books are what I was left with reading at 13 years old, Many Lives, Many Masters. And I was reading books about healing from Dr. Brian Weiss and Caroline Myss and Bernie Siegel and all these people who became super inspirational to me. And I said, I never want to deal with that myself, but I also don't want to see other people suffer in the way that she did. And I want to be able to help people. So I moved into the alternative health world, and that's how it started until I had a series of my own health challenges, first thyroid cancer, and then Lyme disease, and then long COVID as I was a practitioner. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Wow. That's like the triple whammy right there.
Yeah.
I mean, and Lyme disease, I think from what I understand, can stay dormant and you can have symptoms for a very, very long time if untreated. So let's dive into Lyme disease.
Treated, to be honest, if you treat Lyme disease right away,
right,
you see a tick bite. Not everyone sees it. People often don't get a diagnosis because they don't see the traditional bullseye rash, which you think, or you don't see the tick on your body. That happened to me. It was probably like a nymph tick that was the size of a poppy seed. I never saw it. And when I was having blurred vision and fainting spells and all this stuff going on, I thought my thyroid cancer came back. So it took a year to diagnose it. And if you wait a year and you don't get treated, it can become chronic. And that's how it's very hard to deal with. So, yeah.
Oh, well, wow. So were you able to treat it, or had it gone too far?
Actually, I had a really good network of people in my orbit. I worked in a functional medicine practice. We were the type of practice, all the practices that I've worked in have worked with people with chronic illness. Interestingly, I think everything happens for a reason. And I was put in a practice that
Mhm.
we kind of had alternatives and things to
Right.
do. So I was able to get through the Lyme disease initially. And not that I wouldn't get a flare up every now and then, but for the most part, I became really healthy. This is in 2018 and happened. And by 2020, I was feeling really well again. Then COVID came along and I had a very mild case, but this mild case of COVID, like you said, it can be dormant and then it could resurface, and it became like Lyme on steroids. And I
So
got
what were your symptoms with long COVID? Because there's so many different
so
types of
many. It's,
symptoms.
it's very similar to Lyme. There could be over 200 symptoms. It
Okay.
wasn't like a breathing problem for me or anything like that. It was massive fatigue, blurred vision, light sensitivity, trouble controlling my blood pressure and my heart rate, and fainting. And it was just, I was not grounded. It was a nightmare. And unfortunately, the second go round, no one that I worked with, even though they tried, it just wasn't, no one knew what to do with COVID. And I did every therapy imaginable on earth and nothing worked. And as a practitioner, you start to feel like a little bit embarrassed, like, right? Like, I'm working in one of the top clinics in New York City with the best people. Like, what the hell? So I ended up um, strangely moving into doing some of the gentler forms of martial arts. And that was really a lifesaver for me. And it's just turned my life around. And it's just amazing the strength that I've regained, and how I notice that, and I've always understood this, and I'm sure you do as well, and your listeners, that so much of healing is related to stabilizing the nervous system.
Mhm.
And when we're in the fight or flight, it's very hard to heal. And even though I had a disciplined yoga practice for over 2 decades, for whatever reason, it wasn't necessarily working. And through doing, I started off with Tai Chi and Qigong, and I found this amazing man. He was like my Mr. Miyagi for whoever saw The Karate Kid. And we would spend hours each week together. I stopped all the medications, stopped seeing the naturopath, stopped doing everything that I was doing. I was doing these radical therapies, and just focused on building up my chi, my life force,
Mhm.
and really getting rooted. And we would practice in the park, sometimes barefoot, really connecting with grounding. And I, I thought, okay, maybe this will be nice for relaxation, but I didn't think that it would get me to the point that I would have enough strength that now I'm doing external martial arts. I'm practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu. Like my whole world has changed as a result of martial arts. So when I work with somebody who comes to me, especially with a chronic issue, I like to tell them it's great that you're working on your diet and maybe you have some good practices, and yeah, you're on a good supplement plan and you're doing red light and cold plunges and all the biohacking stuff. But what are you doing for your nervous system and for your life force? And that was something that I really was humbled by, to say, like, I don't know it all, even though I've been doing this forever.
Well, I don't think anybody ever knows it all, number one.
Especially when it's you, it's easy to see someone else, but not yourself.
Yeah, and there's just so much information and things are always changing too because we're learning new things and I think that, you know, there's not a one size fits all
No.
for anybody either, right? You know, whether you're dealing with Lyme disease, you know, or any other type of issue, even medications don't always work the same for each person. And so,
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
know, you do have to be your own advocate and, you know, do your homework, do your research, and figure out what works for you.
Yep.
Yeah. So I want to go back to, I want to share just a quick story because I had long COVID symptoms too, and I'm still having some to some extent. And it's not that bad. For me, it was depression.
Yeah, I understand that.
And I've never been depressed in my entire life. And it's funny because it brings back to tics. So there was a day last summer, and I was just having a really bad day. And it was just like I'm such a high performer that I can always jump out of bed and I'm always just reaching for the stars. And it was so weird because I was like, I don't understand what's wrong with me. I've got nothing to be depressed about, right? Like, what is it? And it was interesting. And I'm so grateful for that experience because now I can certainly relate to that more so than ever, because if you haven't gone through it, it's hard to you can be compassionate, but it's hard to really show that deep empathy if you haven't, it's like you really, if you haven't experienced yourself. But I
Definitely.
was sitting there one day and it was like 5 o'clock and I just started praying and I was like, I just got to take a shower. Like, I just want to get up and take a shower. And I just couldn't bring myself to doing it. It was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. All of a sudden I looked down and I saw this mark on my upper breast. Okay.
Oh,
And I had just had a full body scan from the dermatologist, like just external, just to check for skin
yeah.
cancers and
Yeah.
whatnot. And then I put my glasses on because, these are my readers. I can barely see you, right? If I don't have
No,
my
you're in my
readers
now,
on.
but I have reading glasses too. Yeah.
Right. But like, even when I'm like, I don't, people like when they see me and they're like, oh, I didn't recognize you. Where's your glasses? I'm like, I don't wear glasses.
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm digressing. I looked down and I realized it was a tick.
Wow.
And my husband had to, like, it was in there. So I watched it, thankfully, we live near water. We have a lot of trees and I have a dog with long hair and
Yeah. So you have
we
a lot
see
of
a lot.
factors
We
that are
had a lot of
contributing. Yeah.
So, but anyway, it was just really hysterical because what do you think I did after I found that? I jumped my ass off the couch and I ran upstairs and I took my clothes off and I got in the shower and I'm in the shower and I just started laughing. I'm like, oh, you're hysterical. I'm like looking up at like, okay, God, yeah, you're hysterical.
He got you up.
Got me off my butt and into the shower. But in all seriousness, the long haul COVID symptoms are just far and wide. And my husband has had a couple of very serious long haul COVID symptoms. And the first bout, which was in January of last year, he had multiple blood clots in both of his lungs and
Wow.
couldn't breathe. And they did every, CAT scan that you could because blood clots generally come from someplace and they travel to
Right.
your lungs.
So did they do the D-dimer test on him to see what was
They
going
did everything, and there was no cause for these blood
on?
clots.
Yeah.
And they disappeared about 6 months later, just as quickly as they showed up. Just one
God.
day they were gone. They were just gone.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
now he's got some brain issues. He has to take anti-seizure medication, and I don't know if it was a COVID thing that triggered it, but
It can be. Actually, they're finding that
yeah.
long COVID is a neurological issue. A lot of studies are saying that, not for everyone, but for many people, it's presenting neurologically. And yeah,
And well, it's interesting you say that because I've also, in addition to the depression, which is very manageable now, and I'm doing much better. I basically took most of the month of December, pretty much all of December off, and just was like, I'm just not going to work, and
mental
I'm
health
just going
is
to take
good.
care of myself
Yeah.
and get the rest and not push myself so hard. And that was really wonderful. But the anxiety was also pretty severe. And a few people that I'm good friends with, my coach and another good friend, they both have taught me different types of exercises that you can do to balance your nervous system that are very easy. And I tell you, it's really and I'm curious how the Tai Chi and Qigong, how they're balancing the nervous system, because I mean, I know of them, but I've never practiced it. So what is it that
Not a
they're
lot.
doing that help?
A lot of
Yeah.
people don't really know much about it because Tai Chi and Qigong doesn't have enough good PR, in my opinion,
Okay.
especially amongst younger populations. They feel like it's something that you do when you're elderly and it's not really beneficial, when you're younger. And there's so much benefit and it works. So Qi, basically, Qigong, Qi is the energy that flows throughout your body. And if
Right.
you, let's say, go to an acupuncturist and they're looking at all the systems in your body, so they're looking at and the elements. So let's say they might look at your tongue and your pulse and say, you have kidney chi deficiency. Do you have a lot of fear in your life? Or you have spleen chi deficiency. Are you worried? Or liver chi deficiency? Or too much? Are you angry? And all these organs relate to an emotion. So the qigong, when you're doing it, you are moving the energy you can move it specifically for a certain organ and a certain element. For example, if you're feeling worried, you can do these exercises specifically for the kidneys. So the kidneys are located in the lower part of the back, and you're doing these movements where you're bending over and you're supporting your back and you're moving the kidney chi and getting grounded, and that can help to support you and to release a lot of that fear. If you're feeling like a lot of anger, there's also exercises you can do. The eyes also house the liver. They're connected to the liver in Chinese medicine, and sound as well. So there is I love doing the 5 element Qigong. So there's one movement, it's like a punching movement. And as you punch, you're making a sound and you're giving these angry eyes and it's shh, shh. So you're with resistance. And just that alone, you feel like smoke's coming out of your eyes and you're resisting with your punch, but it's helping to detoxify the liver. So these type of postures really help just with the emotions, but also feeling grounded. And if you really want to get the best practice, I know it's cold outside right now, but I'm in Miami for the winter. So I go to the beach at sunset and I go barefoot and I get my grounding in. And then I do these sets for each of the organs. And if I have any brain fog or I'm just not feeling great, it truly lifts. I mean, during the summer, I'm in New York half the year, and I just go out to my back, right behind my building is Riverside Park. And I'll go there and I just get barefoot right on the grass, wear tick spray. But I do my grounding at the same time, and it is incredible. And this has helped my neurological symptoms and vestibular issues because I was very dizzy and I had all these neurological things going on that neurologists could not help. I had a nurse at one point come to my house for 5 hours a day to inject human plasma in me, and I had to cry. I cried. It was terrible. And
Oh
I
my
get
gosh.
more from being barefoot outside doing these exercises than I get from any of that. And so that's the Qigong. And then Tai Chi also works on the different organs in the body, but Tai means grand, right? So you're doing these bigger movements and motions, and it actually is Kung Fu. It's just in a slower motion, it's soft and it's internal. But it's still actually a form of self-defense. It's just a slower version, but it's really beautiful as you get into it. And it's just become a part of my everyday practice and my life. Like, you know how you have your rituals, you pray, like I
Yeah.
pray every day, and I do certain things as far as my self-care, but the Tai Chi and Qigong, I don't feel like me unless I do that.
Mm. That's so beautiful that you found something that does that for you. Well, and you mentioned that you had been practicing yoga for a few decades,
Yeah, and
and
I
that
was
wasn't
teaching
really
too.
doing it.
And I was shocked because, I was teaching, I taught meditation. I really thought I understood the nervous system and getting calm, and maybe you can relate to this, but I'm even when I taught meditation, I could be a bottle of anxiety, but I could present myself in a
Mhm.
very calm and grounded way that nobody would know. So here I am, this bottle of anxiety, teaching my yoga classes, and I just couldn't release it. And I find that now it's happening for me. I'm not saying the anxiety is fully gone. I don't know if it'll ever fully leave with, with my personality, but
Right.
it definitely is very helpful. So yes, it's doing a lot more for me than yoga ever did.
Well, and here's the thing, folks. Like yoga may work for most people,
Yeah.
right? And maybe, right? And here's just I'm just pulling this. I'm, this doesn't come from nowhere. I do know something on this, but maybe because your body was so used to those yoga poses
Yeah.
that the Tai Chi and the Qigong brought in a different element and it was making your body move in a way that it hadn't been doing before. And that's right, because you don't want to get stagnant with your workouts. If you do the same workout all the time, you're not going to build your muscles. You got to mix it up and you've got to confuse and you've got to, mix things up really.
Right. It's like rewiring your brain, almost like
Yeah,
learning a new language. And I think that's maybe what it was. Maybe if I had just picked up yoga at this point in time, maybe it would have been the thing. But because
sure.
yoga for me was like walking, it was so second nature. And
Right.
yeah,
And your body was just so used to it
right.
that, you have to do something different in order to really confuse. And the body's like, wait, what are you doing? Oh, okay, yeah, and it responded to it because it was new and different.
Right. And there's a lot of resistance when people get to a certain age sometimes because we like to be good at things. And if we're
Right.
very high performing people and achievers and things like that, it's like we don't want to start something that we might suck at or not be coordinated with. I mean, even for me, when I first started, I was, I had my yoga practice down, but I felt like I was spastic when I was starting with Tai Chi. Like I couldn't get the
Yeah.
moves but I stuck with it. But a lot of people are resistant to trying new things because they like what they're good at and that's what they want to do. So sometimes it's good to just clean slate, be open, and desperation sometimes leads to inspiration. And I was desperate, so I did what I had to do.
Like I always say, folks, in order to grow, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And a lot of times doing something that's that uncomfortable, like trying something new like that. I remember I did Bikram yoga for almost 3 years. And
Mm-hmm.
for probably about a year, I was like, I get so obsessed. I was doing it 5 days a week. And that was probably the most that I could really physically do it because it
That's a lot.
takes, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I like the way it made you feel. And it was the repetitiveness of the poses, doing that same thing over and over and over and the heat and the sweating. But yeah, it kind of fell off. It's not as popular as it used to be. It kind of had its time. And now I don't know. I don't really hear much about it anymore. But
Yeah, well, there was some issue with that, but I
there
won't
was some
do
issue with
it.
them. But yeah, we don't need to go down that
Yeah,
road.
exactly.
But yeah, yoga is awesome. All right. So let's talk about when a client comes to see you and they're dealing with some sort of, I don't know what's going on. What is your approach to dealing with them with like a new patient?
So first, we definitely have to look at lab work. I don't know how practitioners can work with anyone without know what's going on internally because I think there's so many clues that are revealed in labs. But also sometimes the lab work they're getting is very basic. If you go to your GP, you might just get like a comprehensive blood panel, CBC, complete blood cell, your glucose panel, lipid panel,
Right.
and that might be it. And they might not even really look into hormones or a viral panel or things like that. So if there's some things that stick out to me, I maybe will ask them to go a little bit deeper in their lab work so we can talk about that and make sure that whatever I'm doing is tailored to them because you have to realize we are all bio individual. And I think you were kind of hitting on that people are different in the beginning. And some people are so set in their ways about what works with helping people. Some people say the vegetarian diet's the best thing in the world. Like everyone should be a vegan because yeah, it's better for the planet. Okay, fine, and it's kinder to animals, but maybe it's not good for a certain population. I know with people with thyroid issues or uh, sometimes issues with their glucose levels and they're having too many carbohydrates, like maybe don't do well as a vegan. Sometimes carnivore is great, but it may not be good for someone who has a history of gallbladder issues or high cholesterol or cardiovascular issues. So piece by piece, I really like to understand what's going on with their medical history and then get to know their personality and what's realistic because health is not just about following a specific nutrition plan or taking handfuls of supplements or doing therapies, but it's about really readjusting your life in a realistic way that you can follow and that makes you happy, right? Like if I tell someone to do something and they're like, I hate this freaking diet, this sucks, like I can't do this workout every day, like this is just not fitting into my world, they're not going to be compliant.
Yeah.
So you have to like
Mm-mm.
really get to know them and see what they're open to and pace people and set realistic expectations so they can actually get better.
Well, the biggest fault that people can make, the biggest mistake that people can make is, when you just dive in and you try to change everything at once.
Right.
You change your diet, start working out every day, but you're just setting yourself up for failure
Yeah.
because you just can't take those massive changes at once. And I'm always like, just let's one thing at a time. Let's get that one thing down first.
Well, that's like now this time of
And
year, it's like this is when people start falling off. They go in head
right,
first, January 1st, and then they're like, oh God, like, ugh, I can't do all of this. And then they just do
yeah,
nothing. So
right,
yeah, that
yeah.
can't.
Yeah, and when you're trying to change too many things at once, it's very, very, I mean, some people can do it, but it's very, very difficult. And you got to work up to that type of lifestyle because at the end of the day, we want lasting change, not just temporary change.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I love the work that you're doing. I love
Yeah.
everything that you've been talking about. Is there anything else that I haven't brought up that you'd like to mention for the audience?
Well, I think, we had talked about the nervous system, which I think is a really big deal. And it's not only pertaining to people who have chronic illness, but I just think, I know your podcast is on happiness. And I think that right now, the world is a very tough place to live in. It's hard to open social media. It's hard to see what's happening all over the place. There's a lot of news, and if you're an empathetic person, or you're sensitive, or it can really affect you, and it can, even if you're perfectly healthy, it can make you sleepy, or it can make you anxious, or make you not sleep. And so that's why I just think we all need to adopt rituals that will really help us to be able to deal with these challenges that are popping up in our world so rapidly. Because yeah, you could choose to be asleep and kind of like ignore everything that's going on, and maybe that's one way of looking at life. But I think if you want to live purposefully and openly and awake, then you have to also be able to receive all that information that's coming in, but also ground yourself enough to be able to handle it and not have it affect you physically. So that's one thing that I've been working on for personally, but also trying to help other people to get to that as well, because emotions play such a big role in our healing. I think it's stress is detrimental to our body, definitely, is gluten and sugar and artificial sweeteners and all this other crap. It's our emotional state. And I think that we really need to, all of us need to work on regulating that.
Yeah, I read I was doing research for a presentation that I was doing, and the statistic, I don't have the exact data in front of me, but it was something around 70% of all doctors' visits are stress related or caused from stress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stress is huge. So I definitely
Yeah.
believe that. And it's working on that, and knowing that even through going through stressful times and finding your peace. You can't always be in the happiest place, but if you can just find
Right.
that you're content with where you are and you're happy with your lot in life, like that's a big thing to work on. And it's something that, yeah, you could be so disciplined. And I know that even for myself, I was always disciplined in my workouts and my eating and kind of militant about it. But marshaling your thoughts and really being in control of being centered, that I find is one of the hardest challenges, and something that a lot of us really need to work on, maybe most of us.
I would agree. I would agree. And I mean, that's really how I have tried to live my life for the last 35 years and why I started this podcast. And
Yeah,
because, when especially when I started the podcast, I launched my book, which is also the same name, Happiness Solved. And that's where I was at that point in my life, where every single day, and really to a large extent, right now at this point in my life, although things have changed a little bit, and now I'm really focusing on peak performance. Um, but there's still that happiness thing, and every day it was that struggle and that challenge of finding happiness in my life, and I was like that for so many years. And that's why I launched this show, is because it's a daily thing for everybody. It's not it's not a destination, right? It's a journey. And I'm now 380 some episodes in. I think this is actually, hold on, I just pulled up my spreadsheet. You are going to be for episode 387, I
oh,
believe.
congratulations. Awesome.
But so there's lots of topics, lots of different ways to figure things out, because it's a choice, and we have that choice every single moment of every day, and it's a practice. You just got to practice it.
You got to practice it, absolutely.
Yeah, and you're gonna fail. We're gonna fail, and then we're gonna pull up our big girl panties, and we're gonna, like, okay, let's try this again, and
Hmm.
we're gonna.
right? And that's really, I think, what it comes down to. It's
Yeah.
just every day.
And the more self-development you'll do, the more challenges you'll face. I always feel like big souls have big challenges. The more inner work we do, it's like, wait, I thought I was doing all this work
I
to
know.
not have these issues, and now the challenges grow even bigger. And it's like, well, now you created a vessel to have more challenges. So it's like, there you go. But it's just really practicing what you preach. So it's kind of like as I help other people, I'm also I'm learning from their experience. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't do that either, because we're human, and we even people who teach us stuff still have their own issues. So it's really it's something that, yeah, work on it daily.
Well, and it's you have to be careful who you're talking to as well.
Hmm.
And I'll just share this last thing, and then we can close up. But so I was going through this, and I wasn't telling people what was going on with me. I was just like, I'm dealing with some health issues. Can this wait till January? Because I just literally was like, oh, what's wrong? I'm like, yeah, I'm just dealing with health issues. Because I was like, you know what? I'm just not really ready to talk about it because I've got a happiness podcast. I wrote a book about happiness. How can I not? How can I feel depressed? Like there was this, and this is the first time I'm really talking about it at this level here on my show. But it was like, not that I was shaming myself, but it was like I'm like scratching my head. Like, how did I get here? How did this happen? How am I depressed? Right? Like, I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my brain around it.
But you're humble enough to speak about it. I wrote a book called Smile at Your Challenges 11 years ago, and I thought I had, had it all figured out. And then more challenges and bigger, bigger, bigger ones. And I was like, I've reread my book, I don't know how many times, just to be like, I want to be the, the girl in the book,
Yeah.
because it's like, it's us being human. It does happen to the best
Right.
of us. So,
Right.
and that's the thing. But, I think being, open enough and vulnerable enough to share that with people, I think it makes you relatable, and not like this expectation of like, they have to be so perfect. Oh, I'm never going to get to where you are because you have a happiness podcast and you have it all figured out in life. Like, none of us have figured it
No.
out.
No.
We're doing our best, and hopefully we can find more good in our lives day to day than anything else. And that's really the goal. It's
I
like,
Yeah, I started this because I like to talk to people like you and have these types of conversations because it helps me and I learn, right? Because I love to learn. I love to learn new things. I mean, I watch the History Channel. I'm obsessed with ancient history and I love learning. But I mentioned be careful who you share things with. You do want to be careful who you share things with because
right,
there's a vendor that I was working with, and if he listens to this, so be it. He can message me, and I'll be like, well, okay, no, I didn't say your name, but vendor that I was working with, and the person kept alluding like, your health issues, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay. So finally, we were on a call, and I just said, I just didn't want to talk about it because I've been depressed.
right.
And this person said to me, what do you have to be depressed about? He goes, you're not ugly. You could be ugly. And I just sat there.
But you
And
could,
that's the problem with our
you
society
could
that
be
they look at people. Yeah.
That's
Well,
infuriating when people would say that to me. But you look so well. You look so healthy. You look so, when I was
right.
at my worst.
And that's the
That's
problem.
everything. It's
But
infuriating.
it is infuriating. And that's the problem. And I didn't understand the stigmatism with depression until I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't even want to admit to my husband.
Yeah.
I was that felt, I didn't even want to tell my husband about it, and it was like, I didn't want to tell anybody. And then I was like, that's the stigma that people go through. This is real. But then when somebody gave that reaction to me, it's like, what do you have to be depressed about? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. I have nothing to be depressed about. My marriage is phenomenal. My son is thriving. He just graduated from college. He just moved into an apartment with his girlfriend. My mom is she's not doing that great. She's 84. But like everything in my life is going amazing. I have nothing to be depressed about. And yet I was depressed.
Yeah, it happens. It definitely.
And you know what? And it just is what it is. And so I've been wanting to kind of throw that out there to just be gentle with other people, but you also have to be careful who you share your energy with because we can't share. certain things with people if they're going to respond in that way, because that was the last thing in the world that I needed to hear from anyone. And this person is just a vendor. They don't, you know, it's not
Right.
like it was somebody that was like intimately important in my life or anything like that, right? But
Absolutely.
you want
And,
to be
and
careful.
and
Yeah,
just one last thing to mention on that, because, sharing things, and I tell my clients that I'm working with who are dealing with something chronic, they identify with that chronic illness and they share that. I'll even look at their Instagram handles or things like that. And I'm making up a name, but it's like chronically ill Jill, or,
right.
Lyme warrior, or all this stuff. And I understand that, you're going through something and you're entitled to feel emotional about it, but sharing that into the world puts that out in the ether. And I feel like sometimes disassociating yourself from
Yep.
illness, or even if it's a depression or whatever it is, and not giving it life,
Not giving it life.
it's going to make
Exactly.
you so much healthier. And just talking to yourself, and not even identify, like, I went through Lyme, long COVID, and I share it because it helps other people see that there is hope. But I don't sit and say, oh, but I have Lyme disease, I have this. I don't identify with it at this point, and that's what I've
Right.
really tried not to do.
Yeah, exactly. You brought up such a big, big point because, and I think that was why I didn't want to say it to anybody. But then I only told it to people that were close to me, and I'm only sharing it now because I'm through it, and
Yeah.
I feel, really great now. Um, but you just want to, be careful who you share your deepest thoughts with. You just never know how people are going to respond. Danielle, thank you so much. This has been such a great
Thank you for
conversation,
having me.
and important information for people. And how can people, where's the best place for people to reach out to you?
They can go to my website. It's called soulhacker.com, but it's spelled
Mhm.
differently. So it's
Yes,
soulhakker.com. And my Instagram is the Soul Hacker.
right. All right. And I will make sure that your Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and your website are also going to be in the show notes so people can just go
Terrific.
back and refer there.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Danielle. And folks listening, thank you so much for tuning in today. And I hope that you and your family are happy and healthy and that your lives are filled with peace, joy, and lots of love. Take care, everyone.